Ethan Harper had built a life around routine and solitude. The sprawling ranch he inherited from his father stretched across the dry Arizona land, its fences and fields a reflection of the order he demanded in his own life. He rose early each morning, long before the sun peeked over the horizon, to tend to the horses, check the irrigation, and ensure that every part of the ranch ran smoothly. To anyone observing, he seemed a man of discipline and focus, the very picture of calm strength. But beneath the surface, a storm of grief and loneliness raged, one that he kept hidden behind a carefully constructed wall. Years ago, Ethan had loved deeply. His wife, Claire, had been the center of his world, her laughter like sunlight in his life. Together, they had shared dreams of raising a family on the ranch, of waking to the scent of wildflowers and the gentle calls of birds in the morning. But life, as it often does, had a way of shattering even the strongest dreams. Claire had passed suddenly, leaving Ethan with a hollow heart and memories that both comforted and tormented him. In the months that followed, he had tried to carry on, to maintain the routines that once gave him joy. But the emptiness lingered, like a shadow in every corner of his life. The townspeople noticed the change. Friends who had once been close grew distant, unsure of what to say or how to help. Some tried to coax him into social gatherings or events, thinking that distraction might ease his sorrow. But Ethan politely declined every invitation. He had become a man of few words, speaking only when necessary, and even then his tone was often clipped, his eyes distant. He did not want pity, nor did he want the effort of explaining the grief that he felt daily. Instead, he buried himself in work, letting the chores and responsibilities of the ranch consume him. Every morning, he walked the perimeter of the land, checking fences for breaks, water troughs for leaks, and the fields for signs of neglect. Each task was a small victory against the chaos that threatened to creep back into his mind. Caring for the animals gave him purpose, reason to get up each day even when the memories of his wife threatened to overwhelm him. He found solace in routine, in the predictable rhythm of the ranch life that left no room for reflection, no space for heartbreak to resurface. Yet, in the quiet moments, when he paused at the edge of a field or watched the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson, he felt a pang of longing for the life he had lost. Ethan's neighbors often commented on his resilience, admiring the way he managed the ranch alone, how he never complained about the heavy workload. They saw him as a man strong in both body and spirit, someone who could endure hardship without flinching. But strength, Ethan knew, was not the same as happiness. He had learned that lesson painfully. Happiness had once been within reach, and losing it had left him wary of ever opening his heart again. Love, he believed, was a risk too great, a door that could never be closed once opened. Despite the pain, Ethan had not become completely cold. He maintained a sense of fairness and kindness in his dealings with others, quietly helping those in need, though he did so without fanfare or recognition. He would repair a neighbor's fence if it broke, or lend a hand during the harvest. Yet he did these things without seeking friendship or connection. His interactions were brief and polite, but always courteous, revealing a man who, though hurt, had not lost his moral compass, even in solitude. Ethan found ways to keep memories of Claire alive without letting them consume him entirely. Her favorite scarf remained folded neatly on the dresser, a tangible piece of her presence. He occasionally wandered through the small garden she had planted, running his fingers over the petals she had tended with love. These moments were bittersweet, offering a connection to the past while also reminding him of what he could never reclaim. He allowed himself brief reflections, but only enough to honor her memory. He refused to dwell in sorrow, knowing that would paralyze him completely. The town itself was small, the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and news traveled quickly. People speculated about Ethan's withdrawal from social life, whispering theories about grief, pride, and stubbornness. But no one truly knew the depth of his pain, or the careful measures he took to protect his heart. They only saw a man who appeared strong yet distant, a man who had chosen solitude over companionship. This perception suited Ethan perfectly, for he had no desire to explain the labyrinth of emotions inside him, and no interest in risking the vulnerability that came with intimacy. Yet, Life has a way of intervening in unexpected ways. Even a man who has closed his heart to love can encounter moments that challenge his resolve. For now, though, Ethan remained a solitary figure on the vast expanse of his ranch. Walking its boundaries as the desert sun climbed higher, his mind wandered at times to the life he had envisioned, a life filled with laughter, family, and love. He could still remember the sound of Claire's voice, the way her eyes sparkled when she smiled, and the warmth of her hand in his. Those memories were both a comfort and a torment, a reminder of what he had lost and a warning of what could never be again. Nights on the ranch were long and quiet. Ethan often sat by the fireplace in the main house, a cup of coffee in hand, staring into the flames as he considered the day ahead. The silence was heavy, broken only by the occasional howl of a coyote in the distance, or the rustle of wind through the trees. In these moments, he allowed himself to feel the weight of his solitude, acknowledging the loneliness without letting it dictate his actions. It was a delicate balance, one he had maintained for years. A tightrope between grief and survival, though he had closed his heart. A small part of him remained vigilant, watching for signs that life might offer another chance, even if he did not yet know how to recognize it. He had not lost hope entirely. He had simply resigned himself to the possibility that love might be too dangerous, too painful to pursue again. And so, he continued his days on the ranch, tending to the land, caring for the animals, and walking the boundaries of his life with quiet determination. Ethan Harper was a man marked by loss, shaped by grief, yet defined by resilience. He lived each day with purpose, a careful balance between remembering the past and surviving the present. Though he had closed his heart to love, he was not broken. Beneath the exterior of stoicism and solitude lay a heart that still longed for connection, even if he dared not admit it, even to himself. The story of his life, as it was then, was one of quiet endurance, a testament to the human spirit's ability to survive, even when the soul has been wounded. And so, the days passed in their predictable rhythm, the sun rising and setting over the Arizona desert, painting the land in golden hues. Ethan tended his ranch with meticulous care, keeping his emotions carefully in check, unaware that the course of his life was about to shift, though he did not yet know it. The walls he had built around his heart would soon face a challenge unlike any other, a challenge that would test his strength, his resilience, and ultimately, his capacity to love once more. Ethan had settled into the rhythm of his solitary life, believing that the world beyond his ranch was a place he no longer belonged. Each day was predictable, each task familiar, and each sunset a quiet reminder of the life he had lost. But sometimes, the universe has a way of nudging even the most cautious hearts toward change. In one late afternoon, the nudge came in the most unexpected form. It began when Ethan was walking along the far edge of his property, inspecting a section of fence that had begun to sag. The sun was low in the sky, painting the desert in shades of gold and orange. A gentle breeze carried the scent of sagebrush and the distant hint of wildflowers. As he worked, he noticed movement near the narrow dirt road that bordered his land. At first, he thought it might be a stray animal or a passing neighbor, but then he saw her, a woman walking with quiet determination, her eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for something. The woman was Maya Whitefeather, an Apache widow known in the town for her quiet strength and the gentle dignity with which she carried herself. Her husband had passed years earlier, leaving her to raise their son, little Sky, on her own. Life had been difficult for her, filled with long hours of work, careful budgeting, and the constant worry that she could provide everything her child needed. Yet Maya faced each day with resilience, a quiet courage that seemed almost unshakable. That day, however, there was a tension in her movements, a sense of urgency that caught Ethan's attention immediately. Little Sky, her young son of 5, trailed behind her, clutching a small toy car in one hand while holding onto his mother's skirt with the other. His dark eyes widened as he caught sight of Ethan, curiosity shining through the caution that Maya had taught him. Children had a way of sensing kindness and strength, and Ethan's quiet presence, even from a distance, seemed to intrigue the boy, Maya noticed the glance, and for a brief moment their eyes met. There was recognition, not of familiarity, but of shared understanding. Both had known loss, both had walked paths of solitude, and in that moment, an unspoken connection formed. Maya approached cautiously, her steps deliberate but calm. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice carrying a warmth that contrasted with the dry, cool air of the desert. "I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to ask for your help." Ethan straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans, and regarded her carefully. He was not used to visitors, and certainly not used to strangers asking favors. "What kind of help?" he asked, his voice even but guarded. She glanced down at little Sky, who was now peeking from behind her, then back up at Ethan. "I work long hours, and I have no one to watch my son while I'm gone. He's a good boy, but he gets lonely. I heard about you, about how kind and trustworthy you are. I wondered, would you spend some time with him? Just until I can make arrangements?" Her words were cautious, almost hesitant, but there was a clear plea beneath them. Ethan felt a pang of something he hadn't felt in years. His first instinct was to refuse. He had promised himself he would avoid attachments, avoid responsibility for others' lives beyond the ranch. But there was something in little Sky's eyes, a quiet trust and hope, that tugged at the part of Ethan he had long tried to ignore, the part of him that had once been capable of love, of care, of connection. "I don't know," he admitted, surprising himself as much as her. "I'm not really used to this kind of responsibility." Maya nodded, understanding, yet there was a quiet desperation in her expression. "I understand. I'm not asking for long-term commitments. Just a little help. He likes you. He's been talking about you for days." She smiled faintly, and for a moment, Ethan noticed a hint of vulnerability beneath her strength. She was strong, yes, but she carried her own burdens. Just as he carried his, little Sky, sensing the tension, took a small step forward. "Mister, can I come with you?" he asked, his voice innocent but full of hope. His tiny hand reached toward Ethan. Though the boy's presence stirred something deep inside him, Ethan felt a mix of hesitation and curiosity. He bent slightly, keeping his distance, but acknowledging the boy's gesture. "You've got a lot of energy," Ethan said gently, trying to mask the sudden warmth he felt. "Are you sure you can keep up with me?" Little Sky's face lit up with a smile that was bright enough to make Ethan's chest ache. "I can," he said confidently, his voice carrying the kind of certainty that only a child could have. Maya watched silently, holding her breath as Ethan considered the request. It was a small thing, she knew, but to her was a chance for her son to have companionship and safety, if only for a short while. She understood the walls around Ethan's heart. She had seen them in town, had heard the whispers about the man who had closed himself off after tragedy. And yet, she also saw the flicker of something else, something that suggested he had not entirely given up on connection. Finally, Ethan nodded slowly. "All right," he said, surprising himself once more. "For a little while, but you have to promise me he stays close and listens." Maya's relief was palpable. "Thank you," she said simply, a smile of genuine gratitude crossing her face. "Thank you so much." The first few days were awkward. Ethan wasn't used to having a child around, and little Sky wasn't used to being cared for by anyone other than his mother. There were moments of chaos-spilled water, misplaced tools, and more than one minor scuffle-butt. There were also moments of laughter and connection that Ethan had not felt in years. Little Sky's curiosity about the ranch, his endless questions, and his boundless energy forced Ethan out of his own head. Breaking the monotony of his solitary life, they began with simple activities: checking the fences, feeding the horses, and walking along the dusty paths that stretched across the ranch. Little Sky asked about everything, from the birds in the trees to the clouds drifting overhead. Ethan answered patiently, explaining things as simply as he could, realizing that in teaching the boy about the land, he was reconnecting with the world in a way he had almost forgotten. One afternoon, as they worked to repair a section of fence together, little Sky asked a question that caught Ethan off guard. "Why do you live all alone?" he asked, his small face earnest. Ethan paused, the hammer in his hand mid-swing. He wasn't used to children asking questions that required more than a simple answer. "I just like it this way," he said cautiously, not ready to reveal the grief that still lingered. "Sometimes people need their own space." Little Sky frowned slightly, but accepted the answer. "I like being with you," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I don't like being alone either." Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest, a sensation he had long forgotten. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a tiny crack in the wall around his heart, created by the innocence and honesty of a small child. Maya, watching from a distance as she tended to chores nearby, felt a surge of hope. Perhaps, she thought, this man who had closed his heart to the world could feel again. Perhaps, through her son, a bridge could be built, connecting to lives that had both known loss and longing. Over the following weeks, a pattern formed. Ethan and Little Sky spent afternoons together exploring the ranch, learning about the animals, and sharing simple meals. Ethan began to anticipate the boy's questions, to guide him gently, to laugh at his innocent mistakes. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, he began to notice the ways in which Little Sky's presence softened him, how his laughter came easier, how his patience grew, and how the walls around his heart seemed less impenetrable. Maya, too, became a regular presence, stopping by after work to check on her son and to speak briefly with Ethan. Their conversations were cautious at first, filled with politeness and small talk, but gradually, they began to share more about themselves. Ethan learned of Maya's life, her challenges, and her dreams for Little Sky. He listened, offering advice and support when he could, finding himself drawn to her quiet strength and the resilience that mirrored his own in many ways. It was a delicate dance, two people learning to trust each other, two lives slowly intertwining. Ethan remained cautious, aware of the risks, yet he could not deny the change that was happening within him. Little Sky's innocent trust, Maya's quiet courage, and the moments they shared on the ranch were opening doors he had long thought permanently closed. And so, the routine of ranch life continued, now infused with laughter, curiosity, and the tentative beginnings of connection. Ethan's heart, once tightly closed, had begun to stir with emotions he had long suppressed. The presence of a child, the warmth of a mother, and the simple acts of kindness and trust were starting to break down the walls he had built around himself. Little did he know, this was only the beginning. The bond he was forming with Maya and Little Sky would challenge him in ways he could never have imagined, forcing him to confront fears, embrace vulnerability, and ultimately discover that the heart is never truly closed when love comes knocking. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Ethan, Maya, and Little Sky grew quietly, almost imperceptibly at first, yet with each passing moment, it became harder to ignore. Ethan, who had spent so long avoiding attachment, began to feel something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of belonging. At first, he told himself it was only temporary, a duty to help a woman and her child, but deep down, he realized that he looked forward to their visits more than he was willing to admit. Little Sky's energy seemed boundless. Across the open fields, laughed freely when the horses pranced beside him, and asked question after question about the world around him. Ethan found himself patient in a way he hadn't expected, explaining how fences worked, why certain plants grew only in certain areas, and how to care for the animals. Sometimes, Little Sky would ask about Claire, about the wife Ethan had lost, and those questions cut through him like a knife. They brought back memories, both sweet and painful, yet he answered carefully, choosing words that were truthful but gentle, shielding the boy from the depth of his grief. Maya watched these interactions with a mix of hope and caution. She could see the way Ethan's guarded expressions softened around her son, the subtle changes in his demeanor that revealed a heart slowly opening. She felt a sense of relief, knowing that Little Sky was connecting with someone reliable and kind. But she also knew the walls he had built around his heart were strong, forged from years of pain and loss. Breaking them would take time, patience, and understanding. One afternoon, a small incident occurred that would mark a turning point in their relationship. Little Sky had wandered too close to a busy part of the ranch while Ethan was checking the water troughs. A sudden clatter startled the boy, and he froze, unsure of what to do. Ethan rushed to him, grabbing his hand and pulling him to safety. Little Sky's wide eyes filled with tears, and he clung to Ethan tightly, shaking. "You scared me," the boy whispered, his small voice trembling. "I know," Ethan said softly, kneeling to meet his gaze. "But I've got you now. You're safe with me." The innocence and trust in Little Sky's eyes struck Ethan deeply. In that moment, he realized how much he cared for this little boy, more than he had expected. He had not allowed himself to feel such a strong protective instinct in years. The fear of losing someone else, of being hurt again, loomed over him, yet it was overshadowed by a new feeling he hadn't anticipated. Love. Maya arrived shortly after, sensing that something had happened. She found Ethan holding Little Sky. Gently, his hand resting on the boy's small back, a calm and protective presence. The sight tugged at her heart. She had seen him as a strong man before, but now she saw the tenderness he was capable of, the way he could protect, comfort, and care without being asked. It was a side of him she had only glimpsed in passing, and it left her with a quiet hope that perhaps he was ready to embrace more than he had allowed himself to imagine. As the days continued, the three of them spent more time together. Ethan found himself enjoying Little Sky's endless curiosity, the way the boy would ask questions about the stars, the animals, or the land around the ranch. Sometimes he would tell stories about his past, carefully chosen to inspire wonder, without revealing the full depth of his grief. Little Sky would listen, eyes wide, hanging on every word, and Ethan discovered that he looked forward to these storytelling moments as much as the boy did. Maya's presence became more frequent as well. She would stop by to share meals, to check on her son, or simply to exchange a few words with Ethan. Their conversations began cautiously, often about practical matters like the weather, the land, or the animals. But gradually, they began to share more personal thoughts about dreams, hopes, and fears. Ethan learned of Maya's resilience, her determination to provide a stable life for her son, and the love she carried for him. In return, Maya began to glimpse the man beneath the stoic exterior, man capable of kindness, patience, and a quiet strength that extended beyond the physical. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan found himself walking alongside Maya and Little Sky near the edge of the ranch. The sky was a brilliant tapestry of reds, oranges, and purples, reflecting off the desert in a breathtaking display. Little Sky ran ahead, chasing the shadows of birds in flight, while Ethan and Maya walked slowly behind him. With a peaceful silence, punctuated only by the distant calls of wildlife. "You've changed, Ethan," Maya said softly, breaking the quiet. "I see it. You're softer, happier somehow." Ethan glanced at her, surprised by her observation. "I don't know about happier," he replied cautiously. I guess I'm more present." Maya smiled gently. "You're more yourself. I can see it in the way you look at Little Sky, in the way you move through the world now. You've let someone in, even if it's just him for now." Her words struck a chord deep within him. He realized that she was right. He had allowed himself to open up, to care, to connect. Little Sky had been the first bridge back to life, laughter, and love. And now, as he walked beside Maya, he felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel for a long time: hope. The next few weeks brought new challenges, testing the bond they had begun to form. Little Sky, like any child, had moments of defiance, tantrums, and stubbornness. Ethan, who had been so used to order and control, sometimes struggled to maintain patience. But he learned to adjust, to guide with gentle authority rather than harshness. Little Sky responded, slowly but surely, showing respect, gratitude, and affection in ways that touched Ethan's heart. Maya, observing these interactions, felt a growing admiration for Ethan. She saw the careful balance he struck between discipline and kindness, the way he could teach, protect, and nurture without forcing his own emotions onto the child. It was a delicate dance, one that required sensitivity and attention, and Ethan had learned it naturally, even though he had initially doubted his abilities. One afternoon, as Ethan and Little Sky were repairing a broken gate together, the boy stopped and looked up at him with wide, earnest eyes. "Mr. Ethan," he said slowly, "do you Do you want us? Ethan froze, his hand resting on the wooden plank he was holding. The question, simple yet profound, pierced through the remaining walls around his heart. He had been avoiding this, denying it, telling himself that he could not risk loving again. But now, hearing it spoken aloud by a child who had come to trust and care for him, he realized that he could no longer ignore his feelings. Maya, standing nearby, watched with a mixture of hope and trepidation. She had waited for this moment, knowing that words would eventually be needed to bridge the gap between them. She had watched Ethan struggle with his emotions, had seen him care for little Sky, and now she silently asked herself if he was ready to embrace the possibility of a new beginning. Ethan looked at little Sky, then at Maya, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to truly see them, not just as obligations or temporary companions, but as a family in the making. The warmth in his chest spread, a feeling he had thought lost forever. He realized that protecting his heart had also meant closing himself off to joy, love, and connection. And now, faced with the possibility of something real, something lasting, he understood that the risk was worth it. "Yes," he said finally, his voice steady but soft. "I do. I want you both." Little Sky's face lit up with joy, and he ran forward, throwing his arms around Ethan in a hug that conveyed more emotion than words ever could. Maya approached, a small, relieved smile on her face, and placed her hand gently on Ethan's arm. There was a quiet understanding in that touch, shared acknowledgement that their lives had changed irrevocably. From that day forward, Ethan's life began to shift in ways he had not imagined. The ranch, once a place of solitude and routine, became a home filled with laughter, curiosity, and the growing bonds of love. Little Sky thrived in the presence of someone who cared for him, and Ethan discovered the joy of nurturing, guiding, and protecting a child who looked up to him with admiration and trust. Maya and Ethan continued to grow closer, their connection strengthened by shared experiences, challenges, and the quiet moments of companionship. Ethan found himself confiding in her, sharing memories of Claire and the grief he had carried for so long. Maya listened, offering empathy, understanding, and a sense of presence that Ethan had not realized he needed. Together, they navigated the complexities of love, loss, and healing, building a foundation of trust and respect that would support their future. Ethan had come to the ranch to escape pain, to live a life of solitude and routine. Instead, he found hope, connection, and a love he had believed lost forever. And as the desert sun set each evening, painting the sky in brilliant colors, he felt a quiet gratitude for the chance encounter. For the trust of a small boy, and for the courage to finally let someone in. Life on the ranch took on a new rhythm now, one that Ethan had never anticipated. The days were no longer marked solely by chores, sunrise, and solitude. They were filled with laughter, small discoveries, and the steady presence of Maya and little Sky. The bond that had begun slowly and cautiously had grown into something real, something that Ethan felt in the very core of his being. He had learned to trust again, not blindly, but with an open heart that understood both the fragility and the strength of love. Little Sky became the center of their days in a way that was joyful, sometimes exhausting, but always rewarding. He ran through the open fields with the freedom of a child unburdened by adult worries. Yet he also learned lessons from Ethan about responsibility, patience, and respect. Every small achievement and new skill learned on the ranch, mistake corrected gently, offense repaired together, brought Ethan a quiet sense of pride. He saw in little Sky the innocence and curiosity of childhood. And in guiding him, he discovered the healing power of connection. Maya's role in their lives deepened as well. She spent more time at the ranch working alongside Ethan, learning about the land, and sharing stories about her own life and family. Their conversations, once brief and cautious, became rich and meaningful, filled with laughter, shared memories, and moments of reflection. Ethan admired Maya's resilience and her ability to navigate life's challenges with quiet grace. She, in turn, admired his strength, patience, and the kindness he showed to her son. Their connection grew naturally, nurtured by shared experiences and mutual respect. Without the rush or pressure of expectation, one evening, as the sun dipped low behind the distant mountains, painting the sky with streaks of orange, pink, and purple, Ethan found himself sitting on the porch with Maya and little Sky. The boy was playing quietly nearby, building a small fort out of sticks and stones, completely absorbed in his imagination. Ethan watched him, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips, felt a warmth in his chest that he hadn't known was possible. Maya joined him on the porch, her hand resting lightly on his. "You've changed," she said softly, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "You've opened your heart in ways I didn't think were possible after what you've been through." Ethan looked at her, seeing the truth in her words. He had spent so long hiding from love, fearing the pain it might bring, that he had forgotten what it felt like to feel fully alive. I just realized that closing my heart didn't make the pain go away," he said. "It just kept me from feeling anything else." "From feeling hope again?" Maya squeezed his hand gently. "Hope can be scary," she said. "It can make you feel vulnerable. But sometimes it's the only way to heal." Their conversation lingered in the air, unspoken emotions filling the space between them. Ethan realized that he had not only healed in part because of little Sky, but also because of Maya, the woman who had shown him patience, understanding, and the quiet courage to face the past while embracing the future. Together, they had navigated the delicate balance between grief and love. And Ethan knew now that he was ready to fully embrace both. In the days that followed, the family settled into a comfortable routine. Ethan took on the role of both father figure and mentor, guiding little Sky with gentle authority and unwavering support. He found joy in the boy's successes and comforted him during his struggles, learning that love was not about perfection, but about presence, understanding, and patience. Little Sky, in turn, thrived under Ethan's care, growing more confident, curious, and happy with each passing day. Maya and Ethan's relationship also flourished naturally. They discovered shared interests, supported each other's dreams, and learned to navigate challenges as a team. There were moments of doubt, moments when the past threatened to intrude. But they faced these challenges together, drawing strength from their growing bond. Ethan realized that love was not about erasing the past, but about creating a future together. One built on trust, respect, and mutual care. One afternoon, as they worked together repairing a section of the barn roof, little Sky looked up at them with a bright smile. "You're the best team," he said cheerfully. "I like us together." Ethan and Maya exchanged a glance, their smiles reflecting a shared understanding. "Yes," Ethan said softly. "We are a team, and we'll always look out for each other." The simplicity of the statement carried a profound truth. They had formed a family not through circumstance, but through choice, to the decision to trust, to care, and to love, despite the scars of the past. Each day brought small moments of joy, a shared meal, a sunset watched together, a laugh over a playful mishap. These moments, though ordinary, became extraordinary in the way they bound the three of them together. As the seasons changed, the ranch transformed along with their lives. Spring brought new growth and renewal, the fields turning green and the flowers blooming brightly. Summer brought long, warm days filled with work and play, while fall painted the landscape in vibrant colors, reminding them of the beauty in change. Each season was a testament to their shared journey, a reminder that life continued to move forward, offering new opportunities for growth, love, and connection. Ethan often reflected on the path that had led him here. He remembered the years of solitude, the pain of loss, and the fear of opening his heart again. He realized that those experiences had shaped him, but they had not defined him. They had prepared him for this moment, for the chance to embrace love and family once more. And in that realization, he found peace, not the absence of grief, but the presence of hope, joy, and belonging. Maya, too, reflected on the journey. She had faced her own challenges, raising little Sky as a single mother, navigating the uncertainties of life, and learning to trust again. She had met Ethan at a moment when both were wary of opening their hearts, yet together they had discovered a bond that transcended fear, grief, and hesitation. In him, she saw a partner, a friend, and a source of unwavering support. In Little Sky, they found a bridge to healing, laughter, and shared love that bound them together as a family. Their evenings became a time of reflection, conversation, and quiet contentment. They would sit on the porch, watching the sun set behind the distant hills, talking about the day, sharing dreams for the future, and enjoying the simple pleasure of being together. Ethan discovered that love could be steady and calm, not just passionate and fleeting. He found joy in the small, everyday moments, in the laughter of a child, in the warmth of a shared smile, and in the comfort of knowing that he was part of something larger than himself. One evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the clear desert sky, Ethan felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had closed his heart to love once, thinking it was too painful, too dangerous. But through Maya and Little Sky, he had learned that love was not a threat, it was a gift, source of strength and joy that could heal even the deepest wounds. He realized that life's greatest blessings often came unexpectedly, through moments of trust, courage, and openness. Little Sky climbed onto Ethan's lap, wrapping his small arms around his neck. "I'm glad you're with us," he said quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. Ethan hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of the boy's love and trust. "I'm glad too, buddy," he said, his voice soft but steady. "We're going to take care of each other, always." Maya joined them, placing her hand over Ethan's shoulder, completing the circle of connection. In that moment, they were more than just two adults and a child. They were a family, bound not by circumstance alone, but by choice, love, and the shared experiences that had brought them together. As the days turned into months, their life continued to flourish. The ranch thrived, the bond between them grew stronger, and Ethan discovered a joy that he had thought lost forever. He knew that life would not always be easy, that challenges would come, and that grief might still visit from time to time. But he also knew that he no longer had to face life alone. With Maya and Little Sky by his side, he had discovered the courage to embrace love, trust, and the possibility of a future filled with hope. And so, Ethan Harper, the man who had once closed his heart to love, finally found what he had long been missing: connection, joy, and a family of his own. Through patience, trust, and the simple acts of kindness that had brought them together, he had learned that love was not something to fear, but something to embrace. And as he watched the sun set over the Arizona landscape, with Maya and Little Sky by his side, he knew that this new chapter of his life was only the beginning, a beginning filled with promise, happiness, and the warmth of a heart finally open to love.